Hi everyone. My name is Paige and I chose to do my project on pulmonary fibrosis, which I have a lot of ties to. So here we go. So pulmonary fibrosis is a lung disease where portions of the lung become damaged and eventually scarred. The lungs become stiff, which makes breathing harder than normal. Most of the time, the cause of the disease is unknown, and then the disease is termed idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Those who are diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, there's no way to repair the lungs, but there are some medications and other treatments to combat the symptoms. The only known cure is a lung transplant at the moment. So as you can see in the picture, the normal alveoli is on the left. They're open, they're ready to receive oxygen and do gas exchange between the blood. And on the right, you can see that there is scarring, they're not as open, and it just becomes harder to breathe. So that's kind of a little bit what pulmonary fibrosis is. And I do have a little bit of a backstory for you. So I'm just going to let this video play and then I'll pick up after that. All right. So, that story was actually about my grandma. She passed away of pulmonary fibrosis in 2015. She was diagnosed in late 2012. When she was diagnosed, it was very advanced. She was told she didn't have very long to live, which is usually about 3 to 5 years, is what is given with someone of pulmonary fibrosis. So she was diagnosed with that. She was not put on the lung transplant or the lung transplant list because she was told by her doctor that she was too old for the transplant list. And then eventually, a few months before she passed away, we got a new doctor and she put her on the transplant list immediately, but at that point it was too late, it was too advanced, and she passed away waiting for a lung transplant in May of 2015. So this picture on the left, this little girl is actually me and my grandma. And when I was like 5, I don't remember, but so that was before she had been diagnosed. And on the right, there's a picture of me and some of my cousins, and we were doing a bake sale to raise some money for pulmonary fibrosis and a research fund that we put into her name at the University of Utah. So I'm in the way. There we go. Okay, I'm just gonna be in the way. What do we currently know about pulmonary fibrosis is that it's a scar tissue that builds up in the lungs that make the alveoli hard and not open enough to exchange gas. There is currently no cure besides a double lung transplant, which is really harsh on a lot of people, as I'll talk about a little bit later. Most of the time the cause is unknown, but when there is a known cause, it's caused by cilia dust, asbestos fibers, hard metal dust, coal dust, grain dust, or burdened animal droppings. So with my grandma, we actually had no idea what caused her pulmonary fibrosis, and we still don't know to this day. As I talk about a little bit later, we do believe that it is genetic in her case. But some of the symptoms that people experience, and my grandma also did, is shortness of breath, a dry cough, fatigue, unexplained weight loss, aching of muscles and joints, widening and rounding of the fingertips and toes. And to go along with all of this craziness, most of the time it goes undiagnosed because it looks just like pneumonia on scans. Therefore, it's not caught until it's very advanced. And this is the reason why so many people are dying of this disease, is because it's practically unknown because it looks exactly like the same as pneumonia on many different scans. Oh, okay. So this picture on the right here, that is actually that was my grandma's doctor before she passed. Her name is Dr. Scholand. She's up at the University of Utah. She's amazing. So some of the research that she and a team of doctors are completing are some experimental drugs that slow down the scarring of the lungs. So it's not a repair, but it slows down the scarring of the lungs, which kind of gives a little bit more life to the person. And experimental drugs that is inhaled to keep pulmonary alveoli open to allow for more blood exchange. So it pretty much takes the scarred alveoli, it looks like this, kind of opens it up to allow for gas exchange between the blood so you can breathe better. And then there's also experimental drugs to heal pulmonary fibrosis, which is a long ways away, but it's happening, which is amazing. So with my crazy backstory, this is actually my family. In 2012, right before she was diagnosed. We have a crazy big family. We have so much fun. And we continue the fight for her for pulmonary fibrosis through education, through talking about it, and through the research fund that I talked about a little bit earlier. So some of the things I hope to learn through this project, or this research, I guess, is how the disease is transmitted and inherited from generation to generation. So one of my aunts actually got pulmonary fibrosis also, and she got a double lung transplant. She was one of the lucky ones to get one, and she's still living with us. So I would love to know more about how it's transmitted and inherited from generation to generation, and what the rest of us should be looking out for just in case we inherited it from our grandmother. And then what a cure would look like for the disease. As I talked about earlier, there are some things going on about research to cure it, but what would that have to look like to take the scarring away in the lungs? And then the third thing is there anything that can be done in the case of preventative measures to not allow the mutated gene to be activated and cause the disease? So a little bit into that. It kind of goes along to how it's transmitted, because I would love to know if there's a way to have the gene of pulmonary fibrosis, if it's genetic, and how we can figure out to not activate that gene and eventually not cause the disease within the person. And then my future in pulmonary fibrosis, because I am very intrigued with it and have always been intrigued with it since my grandma passed away, actually since she got diagnosed, because I was always with her. Like I said, my aunt had a double lung transplant, and she's still living but not doing great right now. And she's on the left on this picture down here, washing the dishes. But I would love to know why she's not doing well, what we can do to help those who get double lung transplants, and if pulmonary fibrosis is able to come back or whatever. And then my goal is to attend the University of Utah PA school and getting on the research team for pulmonary fibrosis with Dr. Scholand, as I talked before. And then another thing that I would love to do in my career as a doctor and a PA is that I would love to specialize in pulmonary thoracic to help those who are battling pulmonary fibrosis and diagnose those with pulmonary fibrosis, just because it's so hard to diagnose. So I would love to continue the fight for my grandma. So yeah.